sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream, but terror takes us out before you're naked. Yeah, you start to freeze as horror looks you right between the eyes. You're paralyzed, 'cause this is thriller, and no one's gonna save you from the beast that's about to strike. You know it's thriller, and fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight. You hear the door slam and realize that there's nowhere left to run. You feel the cold hands and wonder if you'll ever see the sun. You close your eyes and hope that this is just imagination, girl. But all the while, you hear a creature creeping up behind, and you're out of time. 'Cause this is thriller, there ain't no second chance to kiss a thing with 40 eyes, girl. You're fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight. Night creatures crawling, the dead start to walk in their masquerade. No, there's no escaping the jaws of this alien tonight. This is the end of your life. Come on. Thriller, 'cause I can thrill you more than any ghouls would ever dare try. So let me hold you tight and share a killer thriller tonight. Thriller, girl, I can thrill you more than any ghoul would ever dare try. So let me hold you tight inside a killer thriller tonight.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize y'all's neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. The foulest stenches in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive, your body starts to shiver. For no mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller.
I'm really glad that we noticed the tradition of this song as well. Man, I really like Thriller anyway as a song. It's a great song. Wait. Stop. I didn't do that. Sometimes every so often YouTube's just like, hey, how about I start playing this again? I'm like, hey, how about you don't? How's that sound? Anyway, it's good to see everybody. I love that cover. That's Duende doing, of course, Michael Jackson's great Thriller. What a great song. Always a very positive association with that song for me as well, because first ever tournament that I ever won debate tournament that I ever won, and was also top speaker at in college, was the Bates College Tournament. And that was, we literally played Thriller in the van on the way up because it was right around Halloween time, right around this time. So I've always had a positive association with it. And in this particular year, there was also a little bit of sadness about it because, of course, the awful mass shooting in Lewiston, Maine, which is pretty close to where Bates College actually is. So I've been thinking a lot about those folks. We had a very nice Halloween night tonight. Went out with the kids trick-or-treating. They had a great time, had a big haul of candy. We gave away a lot of our old candy, thank God. I've only got one. We still have basically like a bag of extra candy left, but we had way more than that before, so we've reduced our stock considerably, which is good because I don't have to sit on a bunch of candy up here. So we had a great time with that, and the kids look great in their costumes. I tweeted them out and blue skied them out, so you can take a look there if you want to see what they looked like. So that was really great. And then we came back, and like tons and tons of people. I think it was actually busier this year came by. We must have had a good, like, I don't know, 75, 100 people, maybe 75, something like that came by throughout the course of a couple hours. So it was a great time. And I was thinking about it as people were coming up, parents with kids and everything. And I was thinking about how awful it must be for people in Lewiston and that area. Like, what is it? Obviously, I imagine they're not celebrating anything, right now. I imagine they're not doing anything right now except grieving. So a lot of that was on my mind. And so all of that put together kind of sort of coalesced in my head as far as what we were doing today. So I'm glad that you folks thought about the tradition, and it is good to see those of you who I see all the time and those of you who I see more regularly around this time of the year. And I hope everyone is doing well and is ready for our annual Halloween special event, which is our reading of Edgar Allan Poe. And we're going to talk a little bit about the two pieces that we've got for you today. But before I get there, just a couple of reminders about ways to support us on the channel. If you haven't done so, please follow the channel. Please check out our YouTube with !arvtube, Discord with !arvcord, Twitter with !arvtweets, website arvanellarun.com, financially !arv, and arvsky as well, !arvsky for the blue sky, !arvtreon for the Patreon, !arvshop for the merchandise area. Subbing to the channel is always much appreciated as well. On the publishing side, !Icarus for my graphic novel from Athos Arts, !Library for my tales and tomes from the Forbidden Library. That's my 5e adventure and sourcebook from Alligator Alley and Entertainment, and !Grayshade for my many, many things associated with the Grey Assassin trilogy that you can check out right there. Also, of course, !BLM, Black Lives Matter, important to affirm and assert the significance and importance of Black lives. !Help Now, which is the World Health Organization page on suicide prevention. Important to reach out to others when you need help and reach out to others when they need help as well. And !Ukraine, Ukraine, to help the people of Ukraine as they fight back against an illegal and illegitimate war with bravery and courage. And we send the message we will do so for others in this situation in the future. So, a couple things to keep in mind here. This is the last stream of October of 2023, and the next time I come to you will be in November. I will have my schedule finalized over the next couple of days, and then I'll be posting it. So I just have a kind of generic, great stream coming up on Friday, but we are going to have a very busy November. We've got a Speculate fundraiser coming up. We have got we've got another Negotio Infernales game. The finish of the Negotio Infernales game is going to be coming up as well. We're going to have lots and lots of tabletop stuff, from Expedition from the Mysterious Peaks to Eberron to over on GOG.com's Twitch channel. We will have D&D with GOG, and we should have Talisman Adventures. And of course, we'll be wrapping up on my channel Shire Adventures as well. We'll have the Patreon Field Chat Chosen Game of the Month next month. We'll also have more Starfield. We'll have the Arvocalist, wrapping up Ace Attorney, Apologistus Ace Attorney, and all that kind of good stuff. So we got a lot of great stuff. It's going to be amazing. I know, right, Jasper? Who knew? The last, believe it or not, the last one of October. So, excuse me. So that's what we got going on. Very exciting for all of that. But what we have got right now is our usual epic event of Halloween. So let me get rid of this. Hang on a second. Sorry, we had a couple of drop frames there. I'm not sure why that happened. Okay, so let me get rid of this, and let me turn on this. There we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope everyone is ready. As you can see, I have prepared the room to the best extent that I. That's what it is. That I knew that there was something that was not clicking, and now I know what it was. Hang on a second. There we go. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't so dark. I was like, it should be darker than this. And then I was like, oh, the reason it's not dark is because I haven't turned out the last light bulb. Now it's dark. Now it's dark except for that behind us. So now we are ready to go. So yes, welcome everybody. Hang on a second. Can my camera do it? Okay. So yeah, we are going to be ready to go with our Halloween special of Edgar Allan Poe. Now, I have I've been doing this I think for about 4 or 5 years probably now that I've been doing this. And I have done The Pit and the Pendulum. I've done The Cask of Amontillado, which is my favorite of the stories. I don't know if I've done The Murders of the Rue Morgue, actually. I did The Fall of the House of Usher last year. I've done William Wilson, which was a cool one. So I've done a lot of different Edgar Allan Poe ones over the years. I don't know, actually, that I've done Mask of the Red Death, and I need to think about doing that sometime. Because Mask of Red Death is a great story with great symbolism in it too. I might have done it once. I feel like something is tickling my fancy that I did, but in any case, but one thing I know that I have not done is the story that I'm going to read today. I did do the Mask of the Red Death. Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if I ever did Darken, but okay, so then I did do that. But I have not done this one that we're about to do now. And I kind of was going back and forth between a few possibilities. I thought about the possibility of doing something like, for example, the Oblong Box. I thought about doing something maybe along the lines, because I've done Telltale Heart. I think I did the Black Cat one year. But I was thinking about doing that. I was like, yeah, maybe. I thought about Murders in the Rue Morgue. I think I did not do that one, which I still may do sometime in the future. But that's a long story. And it's also, it's not really more, I mean, it's more murder mystery than it is sort of like spooky. So I thought about it, and I always do The Raven, which I'm going to finish up with tonight. But I decided to do one that I was not as familiar with, or not as, common. And this is Ligeia. Now, Ligeia is an interesting story in a lot of ways, because it's partially tying into a bunch of other. There are satirical elements about this as well, sort of in the lower layers of it, as you will see. But this is one which is a little bit more off the beaten path. And, as I've said many times, I would argue that Poe is quite possibly, he may be the greatest American short story writer. It's tough because there are some other good options. Harlan Ellison's an incredible short story writer. Flannery O'Connor. There are many others who could stake a claim to being like among the best. But man, I don't know that anyone has had the same impact or influence that Poe had. I mean, Poe is just an absolutely brilliant story writer. So I don't know. There's a lot of different options here, but you will see, I think, in this story that there's another kind of layer to the work that Poe is doing here. So we're going to start with this, and then we're going to move on to The Raven. And I am, as per usual, going to fire up a little bit of a check 222. Let's get ourselves a little bit. Just a bit. We don't want this craziness. We don't want that much. We don't want nothing. So we want to have a little bit of echo, like maybe like that. Okay. Question in the chat. Has anyone read the story Ligeia? Is anyone familiar with this story? Hey, Drew, you made it. Happy Halloween. And happy Halloween to everybody, by the way. Has anyone read the story or know of the story Ligeia? You have not? Okay, cool. So I am reading this, by the way, off of poestories.com, which I recommend. There are a number of good ones for Edgar Allan Poe, but he really is great. So this is Ligeia, published in 1838. And all right, let's roll, y'all. It starts with a quote from Joseph Glanville. And the will therein lieth, which dieth not? Who knoweth the mysteries of the will with its vigor? For God is but a great will pervading all things by nature of its intentness. Man doth not yield himself to the angels, nor unto death utterly, save only through the weakness of his feeble will. It's a quote from Joseph Glanville. Hi, Prince Justin. I cannot, for my soul, remember how, when, or even precisely where I first became acquainted with the Lady Ligeia. Long years have since elapsed, and my memory is feeble through much suffering. Or, perhaps, I cannot now bring these points to mind, because, in truth, the character of my beloved, her rare learning, her singular yet placid cast of beauty, and the thrilling and enthralling eloquence of her low musical language made their way into my heart by paces so steadily and stealthily progressive that they have been unnoticed and unknown. Yet I believe that I met her first and most frequently in some large, old, decaying city near the Rhine. Of her family I have surely heard her speak. That it is of a remotely ancient date cannot be doubted. Ligeia, Ligeia, in studies of a nature more than all else adapted to deaden impressions of the outward world, it is by that sweet word alone, by Ligeia, that I bring before mine eyes in fancy the image of her who is no more. And now, while I write, a recollection flashes upon me that I have never known the paternal name of her who was my friend and my betrothed, and who became the partner of my studies, and finally the wife of my bosom. Was it a playful charge on the part of my Ligeia, or was it a test of my strength of affection that I should institute no inquiries upon this point? Or was it rather a caprice of my own, a wildly romantic offering on the shrine of the most passionate devotion? I but indistinctly recall the fact itself. What wonder that I have utterly forgotten the circumstances which originated or attended it. And indeed, if ever she, the wan and the misty-winged Ashtafet of idolatrous Egypt, presided, as they tell, over marriages ill-omened, then most surely she presided over mine. There is one dear topic, however, on which my memory fails me not. It is the person of Ligeia. In stature she was tall, somewhat slender, and in her latter days even emaciated. I would in vain attempt to portray the majesty, the quiet ease of her demeanor, or the incomprehensible lightness and elasticity of her footfall. She came and departed as a shadow. I was never made aware of her entrance into my closed study save by the dear music of her low, sweet voice as she placed her marble hand upon my shoulder. In beauty of face, no maiden ever equaled her. It was the radiance of an opium dream, an airy and spirit-lifting vision more wildly divine than the fantasies which hovered visioned about the slumbering souls of the daughters of Delos. Yet her features were not of that regular mold which we have been falsely taught to worship in the classical labors of the heathen. There is no exquisite beauty, says Bacon, Lord Verulam, speaking truly of all the forms and genera of beauty, without some strangeness in the proportion. Yet, although I saw that the features of Ligeia were not of a classic regularity, although I perceived that her loveliness was indeed exquisite, and felt that there was much of strangeness pervading it, yet I have tried in vain to detect the irregularity and to trace home my own perception of the strange. I examined the contour of the lofty and pale forehead. It was faultless. How cold indeed that word when applied to a majesty so divine. The skin rivaling the purest ivory, the commanding extent and repose, the gentle prominence of the regions above the temples. And then the raven black, the glossy, the luxuriant and naturally curling tresses, setting forth the full force of the Homeric epithet, hyacinthine. I looked at the delicate outlines of the nose, and nowhere but in the graceful medallions of the Hebrews had I beheld a similar perfection. There were the same luxurious smoothness of surface, the same scarcely perceptible tendency to the aquiline, the same harmoniously curved nostrils speaking the free spirit. I regarded the sweet mouth. Here was indeed the triumph of all things heavenly, the magnificent turn of the short upper lip, the soft, voluptuous slumber of the under, the dimples which sported, and the color which spoke, the teeth glancing back with a brilliancy almost startling every ray of the holy light which fell upon them in her serene and placid, yet most exultingly radiant of all smiles. I scrutinized the formation of the chin, and here, too, I found the gentleness of breadth, the softness and the majesty, the fullness and the spirituality of the Greek, the contour which the god Apollo revealed but in a dream to Cleomenes, the son of the Athenian. And then I peered into the large eyes of Ligeia. For eyes we have no models in the remotely antique. It might have been, too, that in these eyes of my beloved lay the secret to which Lord Verulam alludes. They were, I must believe, far larger than the ordinary eyes of our own race. They were even fuller than the fullest of the gazelle eyes of the tribe of the valley of Nourahad. Yet it was only at intervals, in moments of intense excitement, that this peculiarity became more than slightly noticeable in Ligeia. And at such moments was her beauty, in my heated fancy thus it appeared perhaps, the beauty of beings either above or apart from the earth, the beauty of the fabulous houri of the Turk. The hue of the orbs was the most brilliant of black, and far over them hung jetty lashes of great length. The brows, slightly irregular in outline, had the same tint. The strangeness, however, which I found in the eyes was of a nature distinct from the formation, or the color, or the brilliancy of the features, and must, after all, be referred to the expression. Ah, word of no meaning, behind whose vast latitude of mere sound we entrench our ignorance of so much of the spiritual. The expression of the eyes of Ligeia. How for long hours have I pondered upon it? How have I, through the whole of a midsummer night, struggled to fathom it? What was it, that something more profound than the well of Democritus, which lay far within the pupils of my beloved? What was it? I was possessed with a passion to discover. Those eyes, those large, those shining, those divine orbs, they became to me twin stars of Leda, and I to them devoutest of astrologers. There is no point among the many incomprehensible anomalies of the science of mind more thrillingly exciting than the fact, never, I believe, noticed in the schools, that in our endeavors to recall to memory something long forgotten, we often find ourselves upon the very verge of remembrance without being able in the end to remember. And thus how frequently, in my intense scrutiny of Ligeia's eyes, have I felt approaching the full knowledge of their expression, felt it approaching, yet not quite be mine, and so at length entirely depart. And, strange, oh strangest mystery of all, I found in the commonest objects of the universe a circle of analogies to Thete expression. I mean to say that, subsequently to the period when Ligeia's beauty passed into my spirit, their dwelling as in a shrine, I derived from many existences in the material world a sentiment such as I felt always aroused within me by her large and luminous orbs. Yet not the more could I define that sentiment, or analyze, or even steadily view it. I recognized it, let me repeat, sometimes in the survey of a rapidly growing vine, in the contemplation of a moth, a butterfly, a chrysalis, a stream of running water. I have felt it in the ocean, in the falling of a meteor. I have felt it in the glances of unusually aged people. And there are one or two stars in heaven, one especially, a star of the sixth magnitude, double and changeable, to be found near the large star in Lyra, in a telescopic scrutiny of which I have been made aware of the feeling. I have been filled with it by certain sounds from stringed instruments, and not unfrequently by passages from books. Among innumerable other instances, I well remember something in a volume of Joseph Glanville which, perhaps merely from its quaintness, who shall say, never failed to inspire me with the sentiment, "And the will therein lieth which dieth not. Who knoweth the mysteries of the will with its vigor? For God is but a great will pervading all things by nature of its intentness. Man doth not yield him to the angels, nor unto death utterly, save only through the weakness of his feeble will." Length of years and subsequent reflection have enabled me to trace, indeed, some remote connection between this passage in the English moralist and a portion of the character of Ligeia. An intensity of thought, action, or speech was possibly in her a result, or at least an index, of that gigantic volition which during our long intercourse failed to give other and more immediate evidence of its existence. Of all the women whom I have ever known, she, the outwardly calm, the ever-placid Ligeia, was the most violently a prey to the tumultuous vultures of stern passion. And of such passion I could form no estimate, save by the miraculous expansion of those eyes which at once so delighted and appalled me, by the almost magical melody, modulation, distinctness, and placidity of her very low voice, and by the fierce energy, rendered doubly effective by contrast with her manner of utterance, of the wild words which she habitually uttered. I have spoken of the learning of Ligeia. It was immense, such as I have never known in woman. In the classical tongues was she deeply proficient, and as far as my own acquaintance extended in regard to the modern dialects of Europe, I have never known her at fault. Indeed, upon any theme of the most admired, because simply the most abstruse of the boasted erudition of the Academy, have I ever found Ligeia at fault? How singularly, how thrillingly this one point in the nature of my wife has forced itself at this late period only upon my attention. I said her knowledge was such as I have never known in woman. But where breeds the man who has traversed, and successfully, all the wide areas of moral, physical, and mathematical science? I saw not then what I now clearly perceive, that the acquisitions of Ligeia were gigantic, were astounding. Yet I was sufficiently aware of her infinite supremacy to resign myself, with a childlike confidence, to her guidance through the chaotic world of metaphysical investigation at which I was most busily occupied during the earlier years of our marriage. With how vast a triumph, with how vivid a delight, with how much of all that is ethereal and hope, did I feel as she bent over me in studies but little sought, but less known, that delicious vista by slow degrees expanding before me, down whose long, gorgeous, and all untrodden path I might at length pass onward to the goal of a wisdom too divinely precious not to be forbidden. How poignant, then, must have been the grief with which, after some years, I beheld my well-grounded expectations take wings to themselves and fly away. Without Ligeia, I was but as a child groping benighted. Her presence, her readings alone, rendered vividly luminous the many mysteries of the transcendentalism in which we were immersed. Wanting the radiant luster of her eyes, letters, lambent and golden, grew duller than Saturnian lead. And now those eyes shone less and less frequently upon the pages over which I pored. Ligeia grew ill. The wild eyes blazed with a too glorious effulgence. The pale fingers became of the transparent waxen hue of the grave, and the blue veins upon the lofty forehead swelled and sank impetuously with the tides of the gentle emotion. I saw that she must die, and I struggled desperately in spirit with the grim Azrael. And the struggles of the passionate wife were, to my astonishment, even more energetic than my own. There had been much in her stern nature to impress me with the belief that to her death would have come without its terrors. But not so. Words were impotent to convey any just idea of the fierceness of resistance with which she wrestled with the shadow. I groaned in anguish at the pitiable spectacle, would have soothed, I would have reasoned, but in the intensity of her wild desire for life, solace and reason were the uttermost folly. Yet not until the last instance, amid the most convulsive writhings of her fierce spirit, was shaken the external placidity of her demeanor. Her voice grew more gentle, grew more low, yet I would not wish to dwell upon the wild meaning of the quietly uttered words. My brain reeled as I hearkened entranced to a melody more than mortal, to assumptions and aspirations which mortality had never before known. That she loved me I should not have doubted, and I might have been easily aware that in a bosom such as hers, love would have reigned no ordinary passion. But in depth only was I fully impressed with the strength of her affection. For long hours, detaining my hand, would she pour out before me the overflowing of a heart whose more than passionate devotion amounted to idolatry? How had I deserved to be so blessed by such confessions? How had I deserved to be so cursed with the removal of my beloved in the hour of her making them? But upon this subject I cannot bear to dilate. Let me say only that in Ligeia's more than womanly abandonment to a love, alas, all unmerited, all unworthily bestowed, I at length recognized the principle of her longing with so wildly earnest a desire for the life which was now fleeing so rapidly away. It is this wild longing, it is this eager vehemence of desire for life, but for life, that I have no power to portray, no utterance capable of expressing. At high noon of the night in which she departed, beckoning me peremptorily to her side, she bade me repeat certain verses composed by herself not many days before. I obeyed her. They were these: Lo, 'tis a gala night within the lonesome latter years. An angel throng, bewinged, bedight in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theater to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Mimes in the form of God on high mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly. Mere puppets they who come and go at bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping out their condor wings in visible woe. That motley drama, oh, be sure it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased forevermore by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth into the selfsame spot, and much of madness and more of sin and horror, the soul of the plot. But see, amid the mimic rout, a crawling shape intrude, a blood-red thing that rides from out the scenic solitude. It writhes, with mortal pangs the mimes become its food, and the seraph sop at vermin fangs in human gore imbued. Out are the lights, out all, and over each quivering form the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of a storm, and the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy, man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. "Oh God!" half-shrieked Ligeia, leaping to her feet and extending her arms aloft with a spasmodic movement as I made an end of these lines. "Oh God! Oh divine Father! Shall these things be undeviatingly so? Shall this conqueror be not once conquered? Are we not part and parcel in thee, who knoweth the mysteries of the will with its vigor? Man doth not yield unto the angels, nor unto death utterly, save only through the weakness of his feeble will." And now, as if exhausted with emotion, she suffered her white arms to fall and returned solemnly to her bed of death. And as she breathed her last sighs, there came mingled with them a low murmur from her lips. I bent to them my ear and distinguished again the concluding words of the passage in Glanville. "Math does not yield him to the angels, nor unto death utterly, save only through the weakness of his feeble will." She died, and I, crushed into the very dust with sorrow, could no longer endure the lonely desolation of my dwelling in the dim and decaying city by the Rhine. I had no lack of what the world calls wealth. Ligeia had brought me far more, very far more than ordinarily falls to the lot of mortals. After a few months, therefore, of weary and aimless wandering, I purchased and put in some repair an abbey, which I shall not name, in one of the wildest and least frequented portions of fair England. The gloomy and dreary grandeur of the building, the almost savage aspect of the domain, the many melancholy and time-honored memories connected with both, had much in unison with the feelings of utter abandonment which had driven me into that remote and unsocial region of the country. Yet although the external abbey, with its verdant decay hanging about it, suffered but little alteration, I gave way with a childlike perversity, and perhaps with a faint hope of alleviating my sorrows, to a display of more than regal magnificence within. For such follies, even in childhood, I had imbibed a taste, and now they came back to me as if in the dotage of grief. Alas, I feel how much even of incipient madness might have been discovered in the gorgeous and fantastic draperies, in the solemn cravings of Egypt, in the white cornices and furniture, in the bedlam patterns of the carpets of tufted gold. I had become a bounden slave in the trammels of opium, and my labors and my orders had taken a coloring from my dreams. But these absurdities must not pause to detail. Let me speak only of that one chamber, ever accursed, whither in a moment of mental alienation I led from the altar as my bride, as is the successor of the unforgotten Ligeia, the fair-haired and blue-eyed Lady Rowena Trevanion of Tremaine. There is no individual portion of the architecture and decoration of that bridal chamber which is not now visibly before me. Where were the souls of the haughty family of the bride when, through thirst of gold, they permitted to pass the threshold of an apartment so bedecked, a maiden and a daughter so beloved? I have said that I minutely remember the details of the chamber, yet I am sadly forgetful on topics of deep moment. And here there was no system, no keeping in the fantastic display to take hold upon the memory. The room lay in a high turret of the castellated abbey, was pentagonal in shape and of capacious size. Occupying the whole southern face of the pentagon was the sole window, an immense sheet of unbroken glass from Venice, a single pane and tilted of a leaden hue so that the rays of either the sun or moon passing through it fell with a ghastly luster on the objects within. Over the upper portion of this huge window extended the trellis work of an aged vine which clambered up the massy walls of the turret. The ceiling of gloomy-looking oak was excessively lofty, vaulted, and elaborately fretted with the wildest and most grotesque specimens of a semi-Gothic, semi-Druidical device. From out the most central recess of this melancholy vaulting depended by a single chain of gold with long links, a huge censer of the same metal, Saracenic in pattern, and with many perforations so contrived that there writhed in and out of them, as if endued with a serpent validity, a continual succession of partly colored fires. Some few ottomans and golden candelabra of Eastern figure were in various stations about, and there was the couch, too, bridal couch, of an Indian model, and low, and sculptured of solid ebony with a pall-like canopy above. In each of the angles of the chamber stood on edge a giant sarcophagus of black granite, from the tombs of the kings over against Luxor, with their aged lids full of immemorial sculpture. But in the draping of the apartment lay, alas, the chief fantasy of all. The lofty walls, gigantic in height, even unproportionately so, were hung from summit to foot in vast folds with a heavy and massive-looking tapestry of a material which was found alike as a carpet on the floor, as a covering for the ottomans in the ebony bed, as a canopy for the bed, and as the gorgeous volutes of the curtains which partially shaded the window. The material was the richest cloth of gold. It was spotted all over at irregular intervals with arabesque figures about a foot in diameter, and wrought upon the cloth in patterns of the most jetty black. But these figures partook of the true character of the arabesque only when regarded from a single point of view. By a contrivance now common, and indeed traceable to a very remote period of antiquity, they were made changeable in aspect. To one entering the room they bore the appearance of simple monstrosities, but upon a farther advance, this appearance gradually departed, and step by step, as the visitor moved his station in the chamber, he saw himself surrounded by an endless succession of the ghastly forms which belonged to the superstition of the Norman, or arise in the guilty slumbers of the monk. The phantasmagoric effect was vastly heightened by the artificial introduction of a strong continual current of wind behind the draperies, giving a hideous and uneasy animation to the whole. In halls such as these, in a bridal chamber such as this, I passed with the Lady of Tremaine the unhallowed hours of the first month of our marriage, passed them with but little disquietude. That my wife dreaded the fierce moodiness of my temper, that she shunned me and loved me but little, I could not help perceiving, but it gave me rather pleasure than otherwise. I loathed her with a hatred belonging more to demon than to man. My memory flew back, with what intensity of regret, to Ligeia, the beloved, the august, the beautiful, the entombed. I reveled in recollections of her purity, of her wisdom, of her lofty, her ethereal nature, of her passionate, her idolatrous love. Now, then, did my spirit fully and freely burn with more than all the fires of her own. In the excitement of my opium dreams, for I was habitually fettered in the shackles of the drug, I would call aloud upon her name during the silence of the night, or among the sheltered recesses of the glens by day, as if through the wild eagerness, the solemn passion, the consuming ardor of my longing for the departed, I could restore her to the pathway she had abandoned. Could it be forever? Upon the earth. About the commencement of the second month of the marriage, the Lady Rowena was attacked with sudden illness, from which her recovery was slow. The fever which consumed her rendered her nights uneasily, and in a perturbed state of half-slumber she spoke of sounds and of motions in and about the chamber of the turret, which I concluded had no origin save in the distemper of her fancy, or perhaps in the phantasmagoric influences of the chamber itself. She became at length convalescent, finally well. Yet but a brief period elapsed ere a second more violent disorder again threw her upon a bed of suffering, and from this attack her frame, at all times feeble, never altogether recovered. Her illnesses were, after this epoch, of alarming character and of more alarming recurrence, defying alike the knowledge and the great exertions of her physicians. With the increase of the chronic disease which had thus apparently taken too sure hold upon her constitution to be eradicated by human means, I could not fail to observe a similar increase in the nervous irritation of her temperament and in her excitability by trivial causes of fear. She spoke again, and now more frequently and pertinaciously of the sounds, of the slight sounds, and of the unusual motions among the tapestries to which she had formerly alluded. One night, near the closing in of September, she pressed this distressing subject with more than usual emphasis upon my attention. She had just awakened from an unquiet slumber, and I had been watching with feelings half of anxiety, half of vague terror, the workings of her emaciated countenance. I sat by the side of her ebony bed upon one of the ottomans of India. She partly arose and spoke in an earnest low whisper of sounds which she then heard but which I could not hear, of motions which she then saw but which I could not perceive. The wind was rushing hurriedly behind the tapestries, and I wished to show her what, let me confess that I could not all believe, that those almost non-inarticulate breathings and those very gentle variations of the figures upon the wall were but the natural effects of that customary rushing of the wind. But a deadly pallor overspreading her face had proved to me that my exertions to reassure her would be fruitless. She appeared to be fainting, and no attendants were within call. I remember where she was deposited, a decanter of life which had been ordered by her physicians, and hastened across the chamber to procure it. But as I stepped beneath the light of the censer, two circumstances of a startling nature attracted my attention. I had felt that some palpable, although invisible object had passed lightly by my person, and I saw that there lay upon the golden carpet, in the very middle of the rich luster thrown from the censer, a shadow, a faint, indefinite shadow of angelic aspect, such as might be fancied for the shadow of a shade. But I was wild with the excitement of an immoderate dose of opium, and heeded these things but little, nor spoke of them to Rowena. Having found the wine, I recrossed the chamber, and poured out a gobletful, which I held to the lips of the fainting lady. She had now partially recovered, however, and took the vessel herself, while I sank upon an ottoman near me, with my eyes fastened upon her person. It was then that I became distinctly aware of a gentle footfall upon the carpet and near the couch, and in a second thereafter, as Rowena was in the act of raising the wine to her lips, I saw, or may have dreamed that I saw, fall within the goblet, as if from some invisible spring in the atmosphere of the room, 3 or 4 large drops of a brilliant and ruby-colored fluid. If this I saw, not so Rowena. She swallowed the wine unhesitatingly, and I forbore to speak to her of a circumstance which must, after all I considered, have been but the suggestion of a vivid imagination, rendered morbidly active by the terror of the lady, by the opium, and by the hour. Yet I cannot conceal it from my own perception that immediately subsequent to the fall of the ruby drops, a rapid change for the worse took place in the disorder of my wife, so that on the 3rd subsequent night the hands of her menials prepared her for the tomb, and on the 4th I sat alone with her shrouded body in that fantastic chamber which had received her as my bride. Wild visions, opium engendered, flitted shadow-like before me. I gazed with unquiet eye upon the sarcophagi in the angles of the room, upon the varying figures of the drapery, and upon the writhing of the partly colored fires in the censer overhead. My eyes then fell, as I called to mind the circumstances of a former night, to the spot beneath the glare of the censer where I had seen the faint traces of the shadow. It was there, however, no longer, and breathing with greater freedom, I turned my glances to the pallid and rigid figure upon the bed. Then rushed upon me 1,000 memories of Ligeia, and then came back upon my heart with the turbulent violence of a flood, the whole of that unutterable woe with which I had regarded her thus enshrouded. The night waned, and still, with the bosom full of bitter thoughts of the only one and supremely beloved, I remained gazing upon the body of Rowena. It might have been midnight, or perhaps earlier, or later, for I had taken no note of time, when a sob, low, gentle, but very distinct, startled me from my reverie. I felt that it came from the bed of ebony, the bed of death. I listened in an agony of superstitious terror, but there was no repetition of the sound. I strained my vision to detect any motion in the corpse, but there was not the slightest perceptible. Yet I could not have been deceived. I had heard the noise, however faint, and my soul was awakened within me. I resolutely and perseveringly kept my attention riveted upon the body. Many minutes elapsed before any circumstance occurred tending to throw light upon the mystery. At length it became evident that a very feeble and barely noticeable tinge of color had flushed up within the cheeks and among the sunken small veins of the eyelids. Through a species of unutterable horror and awe, for which the language of mortality has no sufficiently energetic expression, I felt my heart cease to beat, my limbs grow rigid where I sat. Yet a sense of duty finally operated to restore my self-possession. I could no longer doubt that we had been precipitate in our preparations, that Rowena still lived. It was necessary that some immediate exertion be made, yet the turret was altogether apart from the portion of the abbey tenanted by the servants. There were none within call. I had no means of summoning them to my aid without leaving the room for many minutes, and this I could not venture to do. I therefore struggled alone in my endeavors to call back the spirit ill hovering. In a short period it was certain, however, that a relapse had taken place. The color disappeared from both eyelid and cheek, leaving a wanness even more than that of marble. The lips became doubly shriveled and pinched up in the ghastly expression of death. A repulsive clamminess and coldness overspread rapidly the surface of the body, and all the usual rigorous illness immediately supervened. I fell back with a shudder upon the couch from which I had been so startlingly aroused, and again gave myself up to passionate waking visions of Ligeia. An hour thus elapsed when, could it be possible, I was a second time aware of some vague sound issuing from the region of the bed. I listened in extremity of horror. The sound came again. It was a sigh. Rushing to the corpse, I distinctly saw the sound, a tremor upon the lips. In a minute afterward they relaxed, disclosing a bright line of the pearly teeth. Amazement now struggled in my bosom with the profound awe which had hitherto reigned there alone. I felt that my vision grew dark. My reason wandered, and it was only by a violent effort that I at length succeeded in nerving myself to the task which duty thus once more had pointed out. There was now a partial glow upon the forehead and upon the cheek and throat. A perceptible warmth pervaded the whole frame. There was even a slight pulsation at the heart. The lady lived, and with redoubled ardor I betook myself to the task of restoration. I chafed and bathed the temples and the hands and used every exertion which experience and no little medical reading could suggest. But in vain. Suddenly the color fled, the pulsation ceased, the lips resumed the expression of the dead, and in an instant afterward the whole body took upon itself the icy chilliness, the livid hue, the intense rigidity, the sunken outline, and all the loathsome peculiarities of that which has been for many days a tenant of the tomb. And again I sunk into visions of Ligeia. And again, what marvel that I shudder while I write, again there reached my ears a low sob from the region of the ebony bed. But why shall I minutely detail the unspeakable horrors of that night? Why shall I pause to relate how time after time, until near the period of the gray dawn, this hideous drama of revivification was repeated? How each terrific relapse was only into a sterner and apparently more irredeemable death? How each agony wore the aspect of a struggle with some invisible foe, and how each struggle was succeeded by I know not what of wild change in the personal appearance of the corpse? Let me hurry to a conclusion. The greater part of the fearful night had worn away, and she who had been dead once again stirred, and now more vigorously than hitherto, although arousing from a dissolution more appalling in its utter hopelessness than any. I had long ceased to struggle or to move, and remained sitting rigidly upon the ottoman, a helpless prey to a whirl of violent emotions, of which extreme awe was perhaps the least terrible, the least consuming. The corpse, I repeat, stirred, and now more vigorously than before. The hues of life flushed up with unwonted energy into the countenance. The limbs relaxed, and save that the eyelids were yet pressed heavily together, and that the bandages and draperies of the grave still imparted their charnel character to the figure, I might have dreamed that Rowena had indeed shaken off utterly the fetters of death. But if this idea was not, even then, altogether adopted, I could at least doubt no longer when, arising from the bed, tottering with feeble steps, with closed eyes, and with the manner of one bewildered in a dream, the thing that was enshrouded advanced boldly and palpably into the middle of the apartment. I trembled not, I stirred not, for a crowd of unutterable fancies connected with the air, the stature, the demeanor of the figure rushing hurriedly through my brain had paralyzed, had chilled me into stone. I stirred not, but gazed upon the apparition. There was a mad disorder in my thoughts, a tumult unappeasable. Could it indeed be the living Rowena who confronted me? Could it indeed be Rowena at all, the fair-haired, the blue-eyed Lady Rowena Trevanion of Tremaine? Well, why should I doubt it? The bandage lay heavily about the mouth, but then might it not be the mouth of the breathing Lady of Tremaine? And the cheeks, there were the roses as in her noon of life. Yet this might indeed be the fair cheeks of the living Lady of Tremaine. And the chin with its dimples as in health, might it not be hers? But had she then grown taller since her malady? What inexpressible madness seized me with that thought? One bound and I had reached her feet. Shrinking from my touch, she let fall from her head, unloosened, the ghastly cerements which had confined it, and there streamed forth into the rushing atmosphere of the chamber huge masses of long and disheveled hair. It was blacker than the raven wings of the midnight. And now slowly opened the eyes of the figure which stood before me. "Here then, at least," I shrieked aloud. Can I never be mistaken? These are the full and the black and the wild eyes of my lost love, of the Lady Ligeia. The end. Spooky, right? Isn't that story spooky as hell? I think it's because he does so much with the description that as you just go on, you're just like, what the is he doing? And by the way, satirical elements there too, as well as think about the way that he both sort of admiringly puts up on a pedestal his beloved, ignores this other woman who then dies as well, but then he sort of has his beloved back in this strange way. Yeah. Yeah, you got that right, Dunsel. That guy was spending a little too much time in the opium dens. You know what I'm saying? Little too much time. There we got a little bit of Kubla Khan going on, I think, with that one. That's a cool story. Cool story, bro. I guess it should be cool story, Poe. That's good stuff. All right. So the answer is always laudanum. Yeah, seriously. Oh, I'll have to double check that, Dark. And okay, I didn't know that. I only had that back to like 2018, so I'll have to check again. It does make you wonder, doesn't it? That he killed his second wife and then delusionally his first one comes back. One of the things that I love about Poe is that Poe is so careful, so very careful not to give you all the easy answers. You know, he just gives you stuff that you're like, oh, okay, so like that thing happened. So maybe that means this, or maybe that means this, or maybe that means this. Really, really lovely stuff. And he really taps into the uncanny, which is a thing that is the biggest horror that we have, of course. Good stuff. Oh, right, Sunless Sea, which I found out that my friend Amal El-Matar, who plays Shire Adventures with us, actually contributed to Sunless Sea, which I had not known before. All right, people. Good stuff. One down, one to go. So, Charnel? Did I say Charnel? It is Charnel, yeah. Did I did I say Charnel or did I say Charnel? I thought I said Charnel. This Charnel house. I think I did that. But I'll have to remember if I didn't do that. Okay. So, second one of the day, which is, of course, The Raven. Now, I have to admit that if I were not a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I would probably have to be a Baltimore Ravens fan insofar as the Ravens are literally named after this poem and after Edgar Allan Poe's work in general, which is pretty badass. But I can't be a Ravens fan when I'm a Steelers fan. That having been said, super cool. Need to group watch The Raven with Karloff, Laurie, and Price. Yeah. It's good stuff. Vincent Price tied into that Thriller song as well. Well, thank you as well, Spot. Thank you. All right, here we go, folks. This is, of course, The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe, published 1845. And for this one, mega echo. That's too much. But we are going to do a little more echo than last time because of the nature of this. Okay, here we go. The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my book surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here for evermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, Lenore. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly fowl to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door. bird or beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing further than he uttered, not a feather then he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at the stillness, broken by reply so aptly spoken. Doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, Nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er. She shall press, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee. By these angels he hath sent thee respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, whether tempter set or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore, desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aden it shall clasp a saint and maiden whom the angels name Lenore, clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Be that word our sign in parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting. Get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, and his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. The end. It's a balm from Gilead too, one thing at a time. Oh man, do I love me some Poe. It's great stuff. That whole thing, the build that you get to the end of this, right? Thank you, Golden Drake. Just sort of the build that you get to the end until it's finally just like, prophet, be that word our sign in parting, bird or fiend. He's just like, you son of a, It's so great. And again, it's that moment of sort of right on the edge of sanity. And is it like, did the thing actually show up, or is it just the guy sort of thinking that way? There's also an element of this, I should say, even in the House on the Borderlands, which is the work by William Hope Hodgson, which is like, I'm going to have to read that sometime. That is like H.P. Lovecraft without the racism. I actually think it's better than Cthulhu. I think it has that same kind of horrible, like sort of the demons spilling out from the area below. But that sort of thing of being right on the edge of insanity. And then what you get, are you like, is that actual insanity? Is it an actual demon? Do we know? Like, that difference is just, it's some combination. And of course, the greatest horror comes from here. This is far more frightening than anything else. Far more frightening. Oh yeah, Lovecraft was a virulent racist dragon. Lovecraft was an awful person. Like, misogynistic and absolutely a horrible, bigoted racist. Yeah. Believed in no miscegenation of the races, like no mixing of the races, that there were inferior and superior races, like it was bad. Yeah. And again, like, the world that he built was really striking and surprising, and that's, I think, why it has such hold on people. But there are other people who got there before him and who I think are better and don't have all of that weighing him down. So again, if you ever want House on the Borderlands, William Hope Hodgson, it's worth doing. So yeah, oh yeah. And this is one of the reasons too. I mean, I've told this story before, but some of you may know that in the original Psycho, the actress who plays the person who's taken out in that movie, I'm not sure. I don't think it was Vivian Lee. I always want to say Vivian Lee. I don't think that's right. Anyway, she is there in the shower, right? There's the shower scene, and you just see the shower, and then you see the knife come up, and then the rip, 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 and you hear her screaming, and then you see just blood pouring down, and actually it was chocolate syrup because it was black and white film, and blood wouldn't actually show up on black and white, so they actually used chocolate syrup for this. But anyway, drains around and around into the bathtub drain. And for years afterward, that actress said that she struggled to take showers alone. Like, she had to double lock her room. She had to like do all this stuff because it freaked her out. And she was in the movie. But Hitchcock knew that the thing that is the most frightening is not like the mega, look at all this gore, right? What is the most frightening thing is that we conjure up our own demons, the boogeymen that go bump in the night, right? The closet that as a kid we never wanted to open, never wanted to look underneath our bed because of the monster there, never wanted to go down into our basement because in some secret recess there might be some creature there, right? This is all the way that we are, and it's because of what our fancy actually creates. And I think there's never been a better writer at tapping into the elements of that fancy, of that sort of working around the edges, than Edgar Allan Poe. Just absolute master at it. And the pacing and the construction is just great. So another Halloween, folks. Ligeia and The Raven. I'm really struck that I can't believe it's Halloween already. Can I just say, I can't believe that. I feel like this year is just absolutely blown by. I don't know if any of you felt the same way, but man alive, it is something that we got that far. So, but I love these traditions. I love traditions anyway, and I love the traditions that we put together. So if you're right, Dark and Wolf, then that means that this is year 7 of us doing this Edgar Allan Poe tradition, and we will continue to do it because it's something I always look forward to, and yeah, so I think it's exciting about that. Yeah, I can see that, Golden Drake. And yeah, like I say, I know a lot of people, Elizabeth Bear writes Shoggoths and Bloom. There are a lot of people who write great stuff in the Cthulhu world, as long as I don't have to deal with him specifically. So, but anyways, this was great, and we're going to do more of it. And we're going to have more traditions coming up. Don't forget, in December, we will have, of course, Christmas Carol with the R Vocalists. That's one of my favorites. Then we will have, of course, the Game of the Year show, which we do at the end, which is always a great thing. And something I think I actually accidentally missed this past year, but we're going to come back to it, and that is a family stream. And this time it's going to be a full family stream too. It's going around Christmas time. It's going to be myself, it's going to be Mrs. Arv, Little Arv, Mini Arv, and now Arv Cat, Arv Cat 1 and Arv Cat 2. Ganesh and Sherbert who will be joining us for that, because I love those traditions, so we're going to be doing all of that stuff. But we are still a little bit of ways from there because we've got November to come. And as I say, I'll have my schedule finalized by the end of the week. We got a lot of tabletop coming your way, a lot of Starfield coming your way, the Patreon Field Chat Chosen Game of the Month here. We've got more Celesta Palace of Ice coming up. I'm doing the release stream for Tintin Reporter Cigars of the Pharaoh. Very excited about that. I don't think I announced that here. I announced it over on GOG. I'm going to be doing the release stream on GOG next Tuesday, actually, of Tintin Reporter Cigars of the Pharaoh, which is very cool. I'm super excited to do the release stream for that. And of course, I'll also be doing the Arvocalis finish of Apollo Justice Ace Attorney and all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to have a really great November, plus the Speculate fundraiser with cool stuff as well. So it's going to be awesome. You started streaming 9 months ago. Holy crap, Drew. Really? And see, you already hit affiliate and all this stuff. Man, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. And it hasn't been one of those things where I feel like things are rushing by and I'm not keeping up with stuff. I don't feel like that at all. It's just one of those things where I turn around, I'm like, Jesus, like the hell, it's Halloween already. So, but that, however, folks, is going to do it for me for this evening. It was a lovely experience being with all of you. For those of you who were here for Die by the Sword earlier in the day and then came by for that amazing Infernal Salon. How good was that, by the way, for those of you who are here for that? That was really awesome. It absolutely does feel like that, for sure, Drew. But at the same time, it also feels like you've been streaming for a long time at the same time in some weird way. Combination, I feel like, for me. But we're going to have all of that stuff coming up for the stream that we had today. And then, of course, this Wonder Poe event. I'm excited. Candlelight, huh? For the next reading, the next Poe reading you're talking about, Wildest Bot? I also am wearing my Black Rock Books shirt today, which I think is appropriate since that is where I did my reading. And we're going to be doing. We also found out that Black Rock Books is going to be one of the people doing KleinCon, which is the event happening January 26th at the Klein Memorial Auditorium in Bridgeport, Connecticut, where we're going to be doing the Return to the Forbidden Library second D&D event. So you may want to stop by if you were in the area for that, and definitely tune in for it. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. And we're hoping to get even bigger numbers this year in terms of people there. It's not a school night this time. It's a Friday night. It's in January, where presumably the weather isn't going to be super great out. So we hope this is exactly the kind of weather you'd like to stay in and watch a little bit of D&D, a little bit of cozy D&D. But that's going to do it for me for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here so much. Again, make sure to follow the channel. You know what to do with the YouTube, with the Discord, with the Twitter, with the Blue Sky, website arvinelleron.com. Financially, !arv shop is the merchandise area. !arv Treon is the Patreon. Subbing to the channel is always appreciated. Thanks for a few of you who did that today. Obviously, on the publishing side, ! Icarus for my graphic novel, ! Library for my Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library. That's my 5e adventure and source book from Alligator Alley Entertainment, from which Return to the Forbidden Library is going to be coming up, that we'll be doing in January. That comes from that book. And then, my pleasure. Thank you for stopping by, and don't be a stranger if you can stop by again. We love to have people. So we've got that. And then ! Grayshade for my Grayshade universe. You can get the first 2 books that are there. Last book coming out next year. TTRPG you can pre-order, and you can get the audiobook of Grayshade as well. And from Trent Sparks too. Last but certainly not least, ! BLM, Black Lives Matter, important to affirm and assert the significance and importance of Black lives. ! Help Now, the World Health Organization page on suicide prevention. Important to reach out to others when you need help, and reach out to others when they need help as well. And of course, ! Ukraine, UKRAINE, to help the people of Ukraine as they fight back against an illegal and illegitimate war with bravery and courage, and send the message that we will do so for others in the future in a similar situation. I want to thank everyone who made this an awesome stream tonight. Thank you to Dragon Spear, to Drew the Damager, to Prince Justin, to Triffid, to Tilted Game, to Triffid, best mods in the business. Thank you to my Patreon supporters and subscribers: Dragon, Drew, Prince Justin, Triffid, Tilted Gaming, Commander Dunsel, Dark and Wolf, Mrs. Dunsel. And thank you so much to my wonderful viewers. Thank you to Seven Vivalet, Asmer. Thank you to A Wild as Bot. Thank you to Cult of Sharks. Thank you to Darth Sisu, Golden Drake, Infinity Simplex, Jagtris, Jasper Kazai, RV. Thank you to Spanian. Thank you to Tackling. And thank you to VMK. I will see you folks back here on Friday for our first stream in November. Until then, for the rest of Halloween, I wish you a happy and safe Halloween, and a very spooky one. I'm sure everything will be fine. Everything that goes bump in the night has a perfectly rational explanation, because nothing, as you know, ever reaches the liminal space of our mind. It's all just in your head. Every bit of it. Be good to each other. Chat.
It's close to midnight, and something evil's lurking in the dark. Under the moonlight, you see a sight that almost stops your heart. You try to scream, but terror takes us out before you make it. Yeah, you start to freeze as horror looks you right between the eyes. You're paralyzed. 'Cause this is thriller night, and no one's gonna save you from the beast that's about to strike. You know it's thriller night, and fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight. You hear the door slam and realize that there's nowhere left to run. You feel the cold hands and wonder if you'll ever see the sun. You close your eyes and hope that this is just imagination, girl. But all the while, you hear a creature creeping up behind, and you're out of time. 'Cause this is thriller night. There ain't no second chance to kiss a thing with 40 eyes, girl. Thriller night. You're fighting for your life inside a killer thriller tonight. Night creatures crawling, the dead start to walk in their masquerade. No, there's no escaping the jaws of this alien tonight. This is the end of your life. Come on. Thriller night, 'cause I can thrill you more than any ghouls would ever dare try. Thriller night, so let me hold you tight and share a killer, thriller tonight. Thriller night, girl, I can thrill you more than any ghoul would ever dare try. Thriller night, so let me hold you tight inside a killer thriller tonight. I'm gonna thrill you tonight.
Darkness falls across the land. The midnight hour is close at hand. Creatures crawl in search of blood to terrorize y'all's neighborhood. And whosoever shall be found without the soul for getting down must stand and face the hounds of hell and rot inside a corpse's shell. The foulest stenches in the air, the funk of 40,000 years, and grisly ghouls from every tomb are closing in to seal your doom. And though you fight to stay alive